Oh, thank you.
I just told them that there was $90,000 in their money market account if they needed money.
Okay.
And they
Yeah.
told me that.
90?
90 in their money market.
Only way to put enough, 8.5 to 9.5. Hi there.
Oh, yeah, there you go. I don't have my key.
But Julie, I don't think,
So that certified letter. That certified letter from the Department of Safety. I'm like, that's a I don't think I checked my license.
There he is, okay.
I was in the sheriff's showing it.
Good, good, very good.
It's a
Right on time.
Quality over quality.
yes, yeah.
Well, I love that.
I'm losing my voice slowly but steadily. Just like that post-nasal drip. And it's going to happen in the meeting. A little bit.
That's what I figured.
Well, okay.
Here come the big guys. That was a neat article for Warren.
Yes, it was. Oh my
Was
God.
that great?
Paper.
The event was so neat.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
Did he know?
No offense.
Did he understand what's going on?
I think a lot of it he did, but he was very overwhelmed at times too. And then he was speaking. He was sort of closing his eyes a bit. That's so frail.
100 years old. He's pretty on top of his game.
Oh my God. Yep, absolutely.
Fortunate.
And Leslie's such a sweetheart too. She's really great. So we have some things to clean up from last week. Hi.
Question about the transfer station petition. There's one up on the bulletin board at Grants, and there was one misplaced at the post office.
I have all of the
What's
ones
the
here.
proper way to do it? Isn't somebody supposed to stand there with a clipboard and find out, who you are?
Well, you have to be a registered voter, so when we get the final one submitted to us, we have to look at, and make sure that they're at least 25. Yeah, and we have many more than 25 here.
Because I think people signed it and they didn't understand that they had
What
to
it was
be-
for.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, there's no like real.
So you just need 25 signatures?
25 signatures of confirmed registered voters
Okay.
in each town, yes.
Do you have a written estimate on the engineering study cost for that?
I have 329.
Probably
So
not
weird for someone.
right?
I know, right?
that specific question.
Maybe now it is. Maybe it was a few seconds ago.
Yeah. That's funny though.
Atomic clock
Do you
is
have
off.
an Android or an Apple phone?
Galaxy.
Oh, see, my phone's better.
Yeah, they are. Well, they are.
All right, everyone.
That's a great.
Hello. Welcome to our second budget hearing, February 6th, 2024. And even though it's not on the agenda, I'd like to still do the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everyone stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, we have a few things to clean up from the operating budget from last week, so, on the, where's my old pages and new pages? Actually, it was just on the warrant articles page, I believe. On the fire department equipment, the original number was 3,000, but it should have been 20,000. And then on the fire department maintenance, it was 50,000 up top, but it was also 50,000 down in the bottom because it was a new warrant article in 2023. So it's in, for 2023, it's below on the bottom line of the warrant articles for budget and actual. And then for 2024, it is on the top because it's part of an actually already existing expendable trust fund. So the 50,000 increase there is offset by the 50,000 decrease below the line for previous year. Does that make sense to everyone? That was part of our confusion. And I think that was it that we had on, do we have anything else on the budget side? All right, so, excuse me, my voice is a little rattly today. So on that note then, for the operating budget, we went through and approved every line item and voted on each of the line items. But we need to make a motion to approve the actual final proposed budget of $3,055,119,000.
What is it?
Are you just gonna look for a motion for
Yes,
that?
for that is that, and that's the operating budget, not including warrant articles.
Okay, well, I will go ahead and make a motion that we approve the proposed budget for 2024 of $3,055,119.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye?
Aye. All right. On the warrant article side, I mentioned a few of the housekeeping cleanup items, but we need to jump down to the new articles, and we had the establishing the Housing Commission. We had agreed on that and voted on it. On the Housing Commission Fund ETF, we did table that so we could get more information, and as a result, attached to your new print here, there are two options for the warrant article for the Housing Commission ETF. And I don't know if you need a couple minutes to read over the revised. So the revision gives it a little bit more context as to what the funds would be used for, and it refers to a specific RSA. And there is a whole section 674:44 on housing commissions and planning and zoning. So this would give it a little bit more context as far as expending the funds. And also in this section, 674:44-I is the section that talks about housing commissions and their authority. So we talked about the verbiage of that, and I'm not sure if you either prefer version 1 or the revised version. And then we have the amount of $50,000. So, do you have questions or thoughts?
I don't know. I'm just thinking about what's the difference between the select board being the agents or a treasurer being in charge. I'm just, I don't know, 6 of one, half dozen of another. I'm not sure if either one of those make a difference to me that way. But again, I'm just seeing this for the first time. So.
Right. Bill?
Yeah, speak to that, please. We had sent the original warrant article to the town council to review and advise us on the wording. And after a second look-see, council said, yeah, that's okay because it's controlled by statute anyway. The RSA actually tells you how it has to work. And so he's advised that to clarify, reference to the RSA would be an appropriate way to adjust it. And it was kind of like, how come we didn't get that advice the first time through? Which would have made sense. And so really the two are saying the exact same thing, no different, except the one that says RSA 674:44 -J is the actual way it would work. And it's by RSA, we wouldn't have a choice. The state says this is how it works.
Right.
So I think in fact the other was maybe unclear because it was based on a regular ETF that you would normally have for say the fire department or somebody else. And that was what wording we used, boilerplate, which was okay to us because we weren't totally familiar. So really, I think the wording on the option 2 that's listed here is actually, it says the same thing, it's just more clear as to what actually works. And so it's not a change that's substantial.
I do have a question, and I'm not sure if either of you know, and I don't know if anyone here from the committee is here, but what is the difference between this housing commission and J-Home?
J-Home's a 501c3.
Okay, it's formed differently, but what's the functional difference?
A 501c3 has no authority.
I'm just talking about what their mission is versus this mission. And I know
okay.
you're not on the commission, so I'm just.
not either, but
Yeah.
Scott was going to be here.
Oh, Scott, I didn't see you in the back.
Scott was going to be here.
Yeah. Do you mind coming up a little? So.
Scott, can you speak to that better than I?
The mission is parallel, between the two. I think the feeling is that having a Jackson Housing Commission provides more credibility. It also provides a better sense of permanence, where a nonprofit can come and go. And the Housing Commission, for the most part, is an advisory to the planning board. And then working with a nonprofit like J-Home typically is how these things are structured. And so a nonprofit like J-Home might be the entity that actually does a lot of the management work. If there are properties that are being rented or managed in some way or development, typically a nonprofit would fulfill that role. And at the moment, J-Home is it's not an active nonprofit. It can survive pretty easily. And so if the Housing Commission is established, then probably J-Home would be revised or brought back to life, and would work with the Housing Commission, who would work with the planning board to hopefully provide some additional housing in Jackson.
And then, are you part of the Mount Washington Valley Housing Coalition?
I'm not. No, I've worked with Jen quite a bit, but
So does Jackson have a rep on that?
I
Or
don't
do you
believe
know?
so, and that might be something that would be appropriate.
Yeah, there are initiatives out there. I just want to know how they're all going to interact and work together. So if it's not in Jackson that we find housing alternatives, but in the Mount Washington Valley, that everybody knows who's who and what organizations are available to.
In the Mount Washington Valley Housing Commission, they're really somewhat of a support and again advisory. They actually can't handle properties,
Right.
et cetera. And I think a Jackson Housing Commission would certainly look for any resources valley-wide, statewide that we can utilize. But the focus would really be Jackson within the valley is probably a little bit unique. I mean, our workforce, quote unquote, housing is probably not as great as, you know, Conway. But our community housing that supports, you know, a diverse, vibrant community, that's probably more so the target of providing more housing in Jackson, is to support the community and the community dynamic.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thanks for showing up. Perfect timing.
Sure.
Do you have questions, Mark?
I have a question, and it may be for Scott, I'm not sure, but the Mount Washington Valley Housing Commission has an advisory role to who?
To the valley,
I mean, like, you're talking about this housing commission having an advisory role to the planning board. So,
that's generally how a housing commission is set up, yes.
and who is the Mount Washington Valley Housing Commission providing that role?
I don't think that they are, you know, there's no sort of legal connection between the Mount Washington Valley Housing Commission and a particular town. That they, you know, their mission is to promote housing throughout the valley. But they are, advisory might not be, I mean, they certainly are there to help support any efforts that are going on. If we're looking for advice, they're happy to give us whatever advice they might have. But they're really more to facilitate the efforts of different groups within the valley. They put on several seminars or conferences. You know, they're really trying to make things easier for everyone that's working to actually create new housing. They don't, I believe they don't have the authority to purchase land or properties, you know, or to do anything like that.
And they're not tethered to any kind of a board or committee or commission?
Not that I know of.
No.
Jen's, well, and I apologize, I should know Jen's last name, Diane Stillwell. She would love to come speak, you know, meet with the planning board, and hopefully we'll have that happen, you know, in the very near future. So again, they're there to support other organizations' efforts
Got it.
to actually create housing.
Thank you.
Bill?
Yeah, if I can be clear, their focus is principally on working in Conway. I mean, they've talked about other things, but if you take a look at the material and their focus, they are looking for high-density housing, they're looking for a maximum number of units, and a town like Jackson has no town-wide water supply, sewage.
Right.
Has terrible zoning for density, all the things that you're looking for a housing commission to push affordable housing, we do not have currently. And so their focus is appropriately so in the Conways. And what the reason we want to have a Jackson Housing Commission is that we want to promote housing in Jackson. That's not going to be their focus, and they've said so. It's inappropriate for them to focus on our town because we are a well-to-do town comparatively to Conway. We don't have the infrastructure for it, and we're just having several strikes against us for them to promote anything in Jackson. If we're going to do something in Jackson, we're going to need to do it in Jackson.
Right. Scott?
Second to what Bill said, and just in case it's a small point, it's the Mount Washington Valley Housing Coalition, not Housing Commission.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Questions other than that?
Bill, you said something was terrible? You referred to our zoning ordinance as terrible or for growth or something?
No,
What-
for
I guess I missed.
the zoning for
Density.
density.
It's terrible.
We're not very dense.
All right, I'm gonna table that for
couple of meetings there.
okay, hold on. We're gonna, you know what, that brings up a really good point that I'll just make as an aside. The zoning board needs members, so if anyone wants to volunteer to be on the zoning board, please see Julie or Betsy. And from that, I'm going to just pop in with my opinion as far as the amount is concerned. I'm a business-minded person, so I think $50,000 seems like a lot of money for the first year for an expendable trust fund that doesn't really have a business plan on where they're going to spend that money. I sort of understand that it's a jumping off point as well, and that consultants can be expensive, property can be expensive, but I would consider this expendable trust fund for probably half that amount. And I think back to the facilities committee that we had several years back where we had $25,000 and didn't use that either, but I just think $50,000 to start the fund seems high. Thoughts?
Well, we do have some planning board members present today, so would any of you care to speak to the statement that the chair just gave about the amount?
And I guess this would be kind of piggybacked on what would the money be spent on, which was the question at the last meeting too. Scott?
So in reverse order, what the money would be spent on, that is difficult to say. There's a long list of things that could easily be spent on. Probably grant writing would be the most likely thing, but there's a little bit of a cart before the horse. The commission is really the one that comes up with the business plan, the plan of action, and there's really a very wide range of different types of opportunities to pursue, and can't go after them all at the same time. So it would be the housing commission that would pick particular avenues to investigate. And so trying to figure out exactly what the money is going to be spent on before there's a housing commission that formulates a plan of action, is essentially impossible. But there are, with the board of selectmen, or the select board, in charge of that fund, I think that any sense of irresponsible use of the funds is, that should not be a concern.
How did you come up with $50,000 to start with?
Honestly, it's a bit of a stab in the dark.
Gotcha.
It could have been much higher. We could have said $500,000 or $1 million.
Yeah.
We felt $50,000 was a good start. And,
Gotcha.
And we looked at, typically what professional grant writers cost, and, 4 or 5 grants or 5 to 10 grants, 50,000 probably is a pretty reasonable figure for that kind of work. If you look at 50,000 and compare it to other town expenditures, how many culverts would cost $50,000? And, recent survey clearly indicates that the town's people feel that housing is the #1 issue that the town faces right now. And so it's a stab in the dark, but, we really want the housing commission to have the ability to move forward once it's in place, putting the housing commission in place, and then tying its hands for a year before it can get some sort of funding, doesn't achieve much. So that's.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Yeah, well, I'd just like to say, we appoint planning board members, we all know that, and the vote was 7-0 to go ahead with this amount in this article. And I just want to show support for you guys. We have to start somewhere. Maybe we'll be a leader in this valley, in what we're doing, or at least helping Jackson, as you're saying. So that's my feeling. Now, whether we lowered the amount or not, I could understand that too. 25 could be maybe as good as 50. I don't know, but you guys came up with a 7-0 vote, $50,000, and so I'm going to respect that and go along with that.
Mr. Bob?
Well, we had this conversation in a planning board meeting at length, and so I'm familiar with a lot that both Scott and Bill have already shared with the group about it, being somewhat of a stab in the dark. The question isn't, could we use that funding to write grants that could really jumpstart this process in this town, at least that's not the question for me. It's more about looking at this budget work we're doing and what will they have the bandwidth to do over the next 12 months. And at the same time, understanding it's an expendable trust fund also. We did have that conversation in the planning board meeting as well. So it carries over, and this is not to say that they're back 12 months from now asking for $50,000 more, which maybe wouldn't be a bad thing, because it would mean they got all kinds of grants and this thing has been catapulted ahead at warp speed, but
We're
that's
asking
not.
for 100,000.
Yeah. We'll be changing the locks on the door if that's your intent. But at the same time, it's not like I'm locked into this amount either. And so if there's common ground somewhere, then let's find it. Every dollar is important every year. This as many as much as any year. Do you have a figure in mind that's somewhere between 25 and 50 that you'd feel good about?
25,005? No, I'm kidding, sorry. No, I really don't. I mean, honestly, if the two of you are gonna support that, I'm fine with it. I was more or less throwing it out there because it would be nice to reduce it a little bit because we do have such a large budget, and I would love to see things take off, like you said, and especially with this initiative. Bill?
Last meeting, you folks asked specific expenses. And this is just a starting list, okay? And I asked Scott in the end about 12 more. But just to start, for openers, potential grant application fees, legal fees, surveyor, engineer, architect fees, subdivision costs, filings, septic designs, approvals, road design, subsidies, current use conversions, consultant fees, trust bank fees, training, association dues. Those are just startup costs. If we want to go and go further, the kinds of things that might occur would be subsidizing a purchase, or helping with closing costs, or helping with doing the kinds of things that the Housing Commission actually does, which is to work with a property owner and figure out a way to establish a fund process, which may require that you actually put real dollars in. We're not talking about 50,000, we're talking about 100, 200, 300, maybe even $400,000 as an expense that might generate from a housing commission. Obviously, those are gonna go warrant article because of the size of them, but these are just mundane, starting things that need to happen. Will they cost $25,000 easily?
In 1 year.
In 1 year, easily. That's just startup. And what we're not asking for is, we're not asking for a budget. We're asking for an ATF so that you can take a look at it and say, okay, if we run into something that's this year, we can actually do something with it. Instead of sitting there and going, okay, we're going to have to wait till another March, maybe, to expend monies. Here, and I understand you guys are tight against the wall, but it's penny wise and pound foolish kinds of things if we're saying we're going to spend these monies anyway, and all you're saying is you're going to want to defer it for another year. When you're deferring amounts for expenses for trucks and fire equipment and things, we're talking about a half patrol car, is that about right, for $50,000 is what we're talking about?
3/4.
Okay, but I understand.
All the way up to- I mean,
right.
And we're talking about the future of our town, and you're wanting to be penny wise and pound foolish. We've done this before about penny wise and pound foolish. Talk about getting a bridge done, and it's cost us how much more for delays and expenses.
Okay,
and figuring
getting
out.
off track. Got it, thank you. Scott? Oh, that's Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
We're both in green.
Okay.
There you go. My thought, and it's just a thought here, is that we were told through budget and so on, or through a meeting of the select people, that we were going to have a new reevaluation. And chances are our taxes are gonna go up 50%, you know, half again what they are now. And as much as I feel and want to help people get a home and have a home, I'm saying, as a person that's been here and has some history here of over 50 years, I'd like to keep mine. So, you know, I think you gotta balance this out a little bit and think about the people that are already here and the cost of being here and what, you know, in the last 10 years, my taxes have gone up over $1,000. So, I mean, I think you've got, not that people are opposed, but again, I think you have to look at about the people that have lived here and would like to continue to live here and be able to afford to live here.
Mhm. And I do just want to make a point as well, that this is a warrant article that will be voted on at town meeting. So whether or not we decide to endorse this and recommend it is one thing, but putting it to the voters is the last step. Scott?
First, I very much appreciate Sarah's comments about taxes going up. Part of keeping the community that Jackson has is allowing the people that have been here for so long to continue being here. You know, if properties become so expensive that it's really just the multi-million-dollar houses and the second homes and the short-term rentals, then we have no community really.
Right.
But at the same time, this housing effort really is for the community. It's not really to provide homes for other people, it's to allow other people, particularly families, to move into town to preserve the kind of community that we've enjoyed for a long time. And I think we're seeing that community lose its vitality, lose its diversity because of property values. And this is really an effort to stem that tide and to, you know, kind of bring things back to the type of diverse, vital community that, you know, that really we all have enjoyed for so long and that we remember so fondly.
Thank you. All right. Anything else?
I'm still just gonna hang my hat on the planning board and the decisions you folks made. And I look around some of the people like Dick Bennett, who's been around this town for a long time and had many hats, and you voted for this, right?
Do
So
you care to make a motion? Anyone? Either?
Sure, I'd like to make a motion to pass this option 2 as we looking 1 or 2?
I
Option
think
2
number
as
2
written.
is a little more.
I would,
For me.
including the $50,000.
I'll second that.
I will stick with you guys and go for it and hope that we have a lot of great results to look at
Yeah.
a year from now.
Yeah.
So that is recommended 3-0. Thank you for the input, both of you.
Call for the vote. I just seconded it.
Oh,
Didn't mean I
I'm
was
sorry.
voting.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that is the revised option 2 on the paper that we're gonna go with. It's just a little context. On the other warrant articles that were financially related, I believe we voted on all of those. So the only one that is left is the reopening of the transfer station store. But before I go to that, Ben, did you have any input that you wanted to talk about the Conservation Commission? I know it's sort of a done deal as far as what we've already voted on for the operating budget, but you had submitted an email to Julie about,
Yeah,
and
just
I'll let you read
in
it.
our discussions going forward of doing repairs of the damage that was done from the December 18th storm,
Mhm.
it is going to far exceed the Conservation Commission's budget and what we're able to draw from the Wentworth Wildcat Fund.
Mhm.
But just in brief discussion with Julie, we have monies available from the money market account.
Right.
But as a commission, we'd like to look forward, going forward, if maybe establishing a maintenance line item for Jackson Falls, just because it will require, you know, with 10-year flooding, that rather than relying on emergency funding for that.
And you know, we did talk briefly about the establishment of an expendable trust fund for town-owned property and buildings. So I think that a little, you know, 2 minutes too late right now.
Yeah.
I think that's something we definitely need to look at for next year's warrants and put that forward, because we do have not just the property in town that the Conservation Commission takes care of, but also the buildings. And that includes the Historical Society, the library, the, you know, the town office, et cetera. So I hope you have funds available. I also hope we get some relief from FEMA, and that's still to be determined, but, and volunteers.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for what you do. That was for what we got
And
out
our
there.
highway department, glad
Yeah.
to help out whenever you need to.
All right. The last petitioned warrant article that we have here is, I will read it, and then I have signatures, et cetera, that brought this forward. So the transfer station dump store reopening. To see if the town of Jackson, New Hampshire will vote to direct the Jackson Select Board to reestablish the longstanding taxpayer service of a dump store at the Bartlett Jackson Transfer Station. This article is contingent upon Bartlett, New Hampshire also approving the reestablishment of the transfer station dump store. So that is the way the warrant article reads. There's a couple things. I'm going to go back to the October 31st meeting that we had with both the Bartlett and Jackson Select Boards, where we had conversations about, with Bob Blake here and the manager at the transfer station, as well as many enthusiastic residents about the dump store and how much the citizens and the people care about it. There were many reasons that Bob gave about things that have happened there. It was sort of the last straw, and also things that Bob has done to help the store stay open, because like the work they do, like he put up a camera and it was stolen the next day. The disgusting things that they get that make it a health hazard for them to have the store open. When we ended that meeting, we ended it with quite a upbeat committee that was going to come forward with a list of volunteers that were going to man the transfer station dump store and allow us to reopen it. And we saw nothing of that. We saw emails from a group of people, revitalization committee, et cetera, that talked about many different suggestions on how to open the dump store, most of which were already asked and answered by Bob Blake as to why they wouldn't work. So to have the volunteers that were going to come forward with a business plan sort of thing that said, we have these volunteers, they're willing to work at the transfer station store, these are the hours we're going to be able to man it, Bob, you will help your staff and make sure that the right things are left there and the right things go to the construction debris or aren't left there because they're not appropriate, like electronics or whatever. That never came to fruition, which was very disappointing. There have been a lot of other comments that are very disrespectful to the staff up there, like get over it and reopen the store. So also, we ran this warrant article by New Hampshire Municipal's legal area and also our attorney. And this warrant article, while it's a petitioned warrant article, will go before the voters. And with the amount of enthusiastic people that signed the petition warrant article, will probably get passed. But it may not be legally enforceable. There's a couple reasons that Jackson won't have a part in that, and that is because we don't employ the staff at this transfer station. Bartlett employs the staff. And if Bartlett doesn't agree to do this, then Jackson would not be able to employ them either. We pay a portion of the salaries of the employees of the transfer station. So it may be very look, everybody wants to see the transfer station opened again, the store opened again. But we need to come up with some kind of alternative that is not forcefully asking the towns to reopen the dump store. We need to come up with solutions. We had some of those at the October 31st meeting, like a community swap day 3 or 4 times a year, volunteers, whatever. But a forcible warrant article, to me, is, in my opinion, disrespectful. So that's my opinion. You guys, what are your thoughts on the warrant article and recommendation?
I don't know, we've had it up there for a long time, but there's been problems. If we can resolve those problems, as Barbara mentioned, that there was someone here that was gung-ho and we're gonna get people up there and we're gonna do all of that. But as we've mentioned, and you just mentioned, that there's 2 towns involved here, we just can't go this alone. I suppose if we did, we might say we're just gonna do it, and that's the way it's gonna be, but we can't do that. I think it's a nice idea, again. We've always had one, but I do also know that a lot of times people bring their furniture up or whatever, and it ends up getting thrown into the demolition dumpster because no one's taking it, it's just taking up a room. But having said that, I think we could make it work, but we're gonna need some assistance from some of the people who came forward earlier to say that they would be glad to man this thing and work with us. So I like it. We have to try and make it work. I'm not sure how we can do that, but it's worth the effort, I think.
Well, 10 years ago, that transfer station looked much different than it does today. And there's been a lot of work that has been put into that transfer station. And it's because it was a priority. And we prioritized the need to renovate and to repurpose that plot of land up there into a true small town recycling center. And I think we do a really good job for 2 small towns working together. And in that sense, it's as effective and efficient and relevant and durable through the years right now at recycling whatever we can and overseeing everything that's done up there as we can make it. With the exception of the dump store. And it's, as has already been discussed, this is not one single issue up there, but a number of things that have, been efforts to skirt around charges for electronics and to put things in there that are unsafe for our staff to handle, and hazardous materials that we don't pay them enough to do. And so I think that unless there is a monitoring plan that I see that gives me the confidence that we're not going to be putting anybody else's safety and welfare at risk, it's not something I feel is supportable from my vote. And I just will have one vote when that time comes. And whether it's a dump store that's open 1 day a week, okay? And so for 1 day a week from 12 to 6, that's 6 hours. I mean, if there are enough people that really care about that, that can happen. But there needs to be volunteers in the community, as Barbara was saying, that step up and say, we're going to have a monitoring schedule, and there's going to be someone up there monitoring for drop-offs every hour that that store is open. And unless there is that level of monitoring up there, we will go right back to putting that crew at risk. And that's really unacceptable to me. We've done a number of things in this town with our primary concern being the risk of people that are working hard and in our town's best interest. And I don't want to take a step back in that way. And I'm just like Frank, I can support it, but where's the plan?
Sarah?
Yes, I'd like to know if you have volunteers, if they're covered through whichever town, Bartlett, Jackson, or the combination thereof, a liability.
Yes, they
get
would
hurt.
be. They would have to go through a background check and be covered.
And also too, if they would all have to have, if I remember correctly, when you worked possibly for the town, and this was many years ago, or at the transfer station, you had to have so many or certain shots to protect you from hepatitis B and so on and so forth. I don't know if that's even something that's done today, maybe.
I don't know the answer to that one.
But, you know, I mean, there are so many things that I think could be a liability, and I do believe that there are many facilities that, even shopping the other day, I saw a shop that had opened up and it says, we'll take whatever you have to give if it's worth selling. We'll take it from you. And obviously, I think if you're going to the transfer station and you're dropping off your belongings that you no longer use, you're anticipating that it's a worthwhile product that somebody else would want. So, you know, there are places that will take them, and if someone doesn't have a pickup truck to get them to these places, maybe the people that are concerned about having a store would say once a month, we'll meet you at such and such, or we'll come to your home like Habitat and take your stuff and deposit it somewhere where it will help.
Right, we do have a list of thrift shops and the Way Station and a couple other nonprofits that will work to get goods like that. So I'm not sure, is that Mary Jo? Or no, oh, Barbara, or Bobby, sorry.
I answered to Barbara also, but I wasn't at that October 31st meeting and have no idea who was the spokesperson or who the people are. That seems like a bottleneck at this point, because I think people are still interested in either volunteering up at the transfer station or continuing to come up with some of those alternative ideas. But you need workers to do that, the swap shop idea, or you know, the swap meet thing. So how would we contact those people who used to be interested but who disappeared?
Barbara Stelly, is it Stelly or Stell?
Stell. I was at that meeting and I've become kind of the chair of the committee. And I think at that meeting, I personally was just surprised that the dumpsters closed, you know. And so I didn't come to that meeting with a list of 100 people that could fill 50 hours.
Right.
And we were presented the information that there was an expectation that the dump store would be open in the same hours that it is now. So at that particular meeting, there wasn't a discussion of other options, you know. And I think that committee has met a few times since then, and we have felt a lack of the opportunity to collaborate with the two towns, and kind of a sense, I don't really want to say opposition, but it's like, wait, you know, we weren't responsible. I guess the community was responsible for closing it to some degree, but it was our sense that the select people had made up their minds, like, done deal. You know, we heard it from our employees and so forth. So, and I don't think really, we do have a lot of people that signed the petitions, I think a couple hundred.
Right.
But I don't think that there's the depth in those numbers to staff it, like, you know, say 20 hours a week, or maybe we only could do 6 or 5. But we haven't felt that putting names on a time thing, again, made us feel like we were going to be part of the solution.
But Barbara, I never got a list of names that people, I mean, you and I had talked before that meeting and after that meeting. So, I mean, we could rehash that and go back to it and say, let's try again and we'll maybe give you more support. But what we got were other suggestions of things. So I didn't feel like the agreement we had in that meeting was being met either. And the other thing was, we did talk about the timing and the hours, because Bob said it would have to be sort of an all or nothing, or someone would have to manage it because people just dump their stuff there. So even if you closed it and fenced it off, people still drop their things there. So I'll be happy to revisit it at any meetings we could set up between the two towns and come up with that list of volunteers and the process to get those volunteers started, and we can blast it on e-news and whatever we need to do, if that's what the business plan suggests. But forcing it to be reopened, I think we would lose some really good staff members up there.
But I guess to the committee, it seems like it's being forced on the community, it's gonna stay shut unless we get volunteers. And it seemed like it was open all those years without that. And that's where the cooperation just didn't feel, and I know the members of the committee, most of them didn't feel like they wanted to provide a list of volunteers because it didn't feel like that was gonna be the answer. If we came up with volunteers, it would be something else to say no.
I would love to have that conversation again and make sure the expectations are clear between the two towns and make sure that it is known of who would be responsible for what. Bob did say that if it were manned by volunteers, his staff would go in at night and get rid of what was in there that is trash or should be in the construction debris or electronics or whatever. So they know that they have to be a part of that, and they would still be managing the process. So I would love to open that dialogue again. You know, this will be on it's a petition warrant article, so it will be on the ballot. But I would love to go outside that again and say, let's figure out a way to do it. Like, yes, it's been open for years, but with the hazardous materials that they get and the unhealthy work atmosphere, and that's outside of their regular job that they do, which they sign up for, you know.
I just had a question though, if both towns pass it, what would you see the future being of the dump store?
I don't think that it can be forced to be reopened, so a committee to find out how to reopen it would still be a feasible thing. So if it's voted on by both towns that directing the select boards to reestablish the longstanding taxpayer service, you can't legally, from what I understand from the lawyers, it can't be legally enforceable. Bob, and then
And as I understand it, there are bylaws the transfer station committee operates under, and the requirement to pass a resolution is a 2/3 majority from each town. So there's 3 selectmen in each town. You have to have 2 voting yes in Jackson, 2 voting yes in Bartlett. The dump store at the transfer station site was not closed after a warrant article of an annual meeting, and it doesn't have to wait for an annual meeting to be opened. It needs to have somebody make a motion to reopen it at that meeting of 6 individuals, someone to second that motion, and the majority of votes from each town. So that's how that dump store, could be reopened again. And again, until I get some level of endorsement from the staff that works up there that they feel there's a plan in place that won't impact their safety and health and welfare, I think it's, and I'm not going to put this on Bartlett. I don't know that there's 2 votes in this town, and I will, go out on a limb and say there's no way there's 2 votes in our neighboring town either.
Wait, so that vote would be after it passes as a warrant article in both towns? And then there's a secondary vote to not.
it's not a vote, I guess.
That's a non-binding
Yeah.
warrant article. It's not something that we're forced to ignore or obey. And so whether or not that dump store opens again is not necessarily anything going to be tied to this warrant article.
Dick, did you have a comment?
Well, I was wondering what the $2,000 was for. I mean, you just put us through the ringer on housing authority. Where they're gonna spend, what is that $2,000?
What is the $2,000?
Way station.
For the transfer station.
Oh, that's the way
Oh.
station. I'm sorry, that's a
That's a
different,
homeless warrant article.
it's a different warrant article that was above the line of that.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. That one goes up under social services, and that was a new, okay. Fred?
I have a counterpoint of view on this. I truly believe that with the current staff and some relatively straightforward changes, the free store could be open and managed appropriately so that there was no health, welfare, or abuse of the employees there. things have gotten complicated in that, I guess Bartlett controls the employees because we only pay part of it. But I really think we can handle most of the objections with relatively straightforward changes that would encourage and help the employees to do their jobs properly without being in danger or abused in terms of having to do too much work. Now's probably not the place to discuss this, and maybe and I know a lot of discussion has been held, but I personally have a few suggestions that might be worth trying on a short-term basis. And I'd be happy to discuss that in depth with anybody, Board of Select people in particular, and we can see whether it's worth a try. Because if you try something, then it fails, what happens? Just close the store down right away. It can be done immediately. So for years, and I'm not a long time here, it was operated reasonably well. There was a lot of junk there that people shouldn't have brought, that's true, and that needs to be controlled. But geez, I don't know how long, Frank, know how many years that thing was open, but I think it's of great value to the town.
I totally agree with you as far as being a great value to the town, just based on the input that we've gotten from people. And it would be worth it to talk absolutely and hear your ideas. And I hope I don't have to shoot them down because it's gone through so many examples of how they've tried to do things. So if you have new ideas, I'd love to hear them, and we could include this Bob Blake, the manager, too, and have him hear that too. So again, opening the communication is really important. That's how we're going to get this done. Communicating on how to reopen it or come up with an alternative. Scott?
I am just curious, for perspective, has it always been a problem, or have the problems been more recent?
It got really worse over the past, probably, I want to say 6 months to a year, where they have gotten toilets, bodily fluids, crock pots with food in them, and we're not talking about any new products here, so you can imagine what conditions some of them are in. So electronics are dropped there by people who just don't want to put it in the right place or don't want to pay for it to go into the construction debris or where it should be properly disposed of. And the problem too was the fact that the staff can't always be in the transfer station dump store. They're doing their job, and there's not someone manning that 100% of the time, so something can be dumped in there or left there, and they don't go in there until an hour later, and it's too late. The stuff's there. Now they have to take it and move it out, and it ends up being their problem instead of the respectful people that we were dealing with putting it in the right place in the first place. So it has gotten worse.
And certainly, that makes sense, but if it has worked for years and just recently it isn't, is there some way to isolate why that has changed?
I wish I could say yes, because Bob has done what he can to post information at the dump store that says this is this is what you can leave, this is what you can't leave. Again, I used the example of somebody left a webcam in there, and he put it up in the corner of the store like it was going to be monitored, and left the cord dangling to the bottom so it looked like it was plugged in, and the next day someone cut it down and stole the camera, and it wasn't even working. So, lack of respect, I think I could go on for a long time about lack of respect, but what's changed? I don't know what's changed in our whole...
That's a really broad question. It's like, why are things different today than they were 10 years ago? But I can tell you the straw that broke the camel's back is when I heard that there were mason jars full of urine left there, and that has drawn a line, and that's why you have staff up there saying, you reopen this without controls and monitoring in place, I'm out. Nobody's up there getting rich.
Yeah.
You know, they're providing a service for the town and they're well-trained and they're a big reason why that transfer station is so much more today than it has been in years past. And I want to make sure that it stays that way.
And I'm not arguing any of
Yeah.
this. I'm just trying to figure out, you know, and it sounds like it wasn't good just 10 years ago, but it was good 2 years ago or 3 years ago. You know, something has changed very quickly. I think the mason jars, that's an outlier. Yeah, that could happen at any time because that's a crazy person. But the other stuff sounds like people just being lazy or not wanting to pay the fees. But again, why did that change occur? And is there a way to isolate the change and really attack that as opposed to throwing the baby out with the bathwater?
Yeah, absolutely agree. If we can come up with some better monitoring and, you know, do we put it in the budget to hire another staff up there? But it's really hard to even hire full-time and part-time staff there to stay. So, Bill?
Yeah, and getting to the point around how things have changed, I don't go here every day, but a lot of times I go and I will see that there are faces I know, and I don't know everybody from Bartlett, so there's a lot of faces I don't know, but I do look to see whether or not people have identifiers on their vehicles showing that they belong there. Not all the vehicles do.
Oh, yeah.
And I also note some folks put their identifier on a piece of cardboard. It's not a permanently affixed to somebody's vehicle. It's obviously somebody's got a rental. They keep on putting it to whomever they rented a place to. I guess my question would be, have we made any effort to, all the places I've been before, you had to renew your sticker every couple of years. I could have a sticker from when I used to live in Bartlett and still go there because it would be honored. In fact, I still have the sticker. If I put it in my car, they would honor it. They would look at it and say, hey, you're still okay.
Coming to get that.
So it's like, okay, but we don't do anything on that. We don't have any renewal fees. There's no responsibility for once you get that card, it can be handed off to somebody.
We did have a meeting about that because it was really a problem about, like you said, not having it permanently affixed to vehicles. And with the short-term rentals, et cetera, trying to nail things down on who was responsible for what they were dropping. If they had Massachusetts plates on their car, obviously they shouldn't have a sticker, you know, or there's some other circumstances. So there have been movements to try to control that. We don't have a renewal process. The administration, we talked about how much administration that would be, and so we're not opposed to revisiting different ways to do things. Just because we tried it before, like you said, doesn't mean today it can't change if that makes it a better solution for the way things are today.
We license a dog for crying out loud.
And some people don't do that. But like I said, communication is really going to be the key to what happens here, and whether it be, you know, through this conversation we're having now or the next Bartlett Jackson transfer station meeting, and we get as much enthusiasm and buy-in to finding that solution. I think that's what we need to do.
If I may, my point was that, like the internet, what makes the internet bad is when people can make anonymous claims of certain kinds and not find any repercussion. And I think the same is likely to be true when someone can go to the transfer station and anonymously dump something and be scot-free for any responsibility for it. That's
the venue to find that solution is really at a Bartlett Jackson transfer station meeting, and anybody that wants, I'm sure, can coordinate a way to get on that agenda and be part of an ongoing discussion. I kind of looked to Julie here to, do we have that date set yet? We don't have it set yet, but we typically meet on an as-needed basis, or if more often than quarterly. And, you know, that's where you'll find transfer station staff and all 6 selectmen. And that's the venue, really, in my mind.
to allow public input.
end up finding a way forward so that there are protections in place and a monitoring plan, and it's not open more often than we feel like, then the volunteers feel like they can contribute to, and, yeah, it's a public meeting.
Yeah.
It's a public meeting.
Okay, but, okay, I'm not gonna get into that point of, because Bartlett has different standards for their agendas than we do, but it doesn't have to be necessarily a Bartlett Jackson transfer station meeting to have ongoing dialogue. If you want to talk to me about some of the things you're recommending, go up and talk to Bob Blake and see what he says too. And he'll help you. The staff up there will help you if you need help with something. They'll direct you on where to go. Talk to them and see if they've tried it, or if they're just, if you have trouble from that standpoint, come talk to me. We'll figure it out. We have to come up with something that works for the staff up there so it's safe and it works, and for us to be able to get back and have that great community store. It's not necessarily people that are transient from other places too. We don't know that, so we hope it's not our neighbors. But you don't know who's dumping stuff in there that shouldn't be, so you just hope it's something that we can fix.
So, excuse me, are you
Barbara?
still saying that it shouldn't be a warrant article? Or,
It's going to be a warrant article because the petitions have been signed.
okay,
We'll make a motion whether we endorse it or not, but regardless of that, it will be on the ballot.
okay. So when it's on the ballot, we'll know who of the select people have endorsed it?
We'll vote on it tonight.
Oh, tonight.
Yeah, and then the ballot will be the voters voting on whether or not to pass that warrant article. Once it's either passed or not passed, it will go to the town of Bartlett and Jackson at the meeting to see if it's going to be a legally binding warrant article that can force the staff to reopen the store.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yes.
Okay.
And so I think that Bartlett is March 14th, this kind of similar forum, is that, then they'll do the similar vote.
Correct.
It'll still,
Yes.
On the 14th. It's
Yeah,
not a ballot.
that's what, oh, I'm sorry, it's
Yes,
not a ballot, it's at the
not
town
ballot.
meeting.
It's at town meeting.
Yeah, so it'll be at the town meeting on the 14th, not on the ballot on the 12th. Anything else? I will take a motion if anyone wants to make it to recommend this addition warrant article.
Well, I'll make a motion to recommend the article, knowing that we're gonna evolve to something, and I know we'll get there. I never in a million years thought it wasn't ever gonna close. As you said, you thought everybody's mind was made up, my mind was made up. I just figured we could evolve into something. And I've heard some good ideas here, so we'll figure it out. I know we can do it. So I'll make that motion to approve this warrant article, knowing that we have some work to do.
And I'll second the motion so that we've got a way to vote on this, but until we have a plan in place that we feel good about and that the staff feels good about, I won't support a warrant article like this.
I am going to vote against the warrant article, so all in favor?
Aye.
All against? Aye.
Nay.
So it's 1-2. Thanks to everyone for all of your input on that. I really appreciate it. I think communication and conversations are a great thing. So, that is it for the petitioned articles. And we tabled that, we voted on that.
May I speak to the petition article?
Yes, Sarah?
Thank you.
Sure.
I just would like to know if, I know we have, the way station is a new petitioned article,
Yes.
and also up above, reoccurring social services
Mm-hmm.
and so on. Would it be inappropriate to ask these reoccurring social services to, when some of them, once they're in, they don't have to be 25 signatures every year? That's
Right.
what you said last year. But is it possible for the selectmen to ask, or the town of Jackson to ask them to send like
They do have to request to be on it still.
Right.
They don't have to have the signatures, but
Correct, but could we have,
a representative?
not even that so much as what their bookkeeping, so to speak, how many NGOs, what they're getting from other, not only our town, but what their running budget is and where the monies come from, if like 40% comes from towns giving it, or if it comes from federal funds, or where their monies are all coming from.
I can, let me work on that with you, because being on two of the boards that are actually on here, I know exactly what you're talking about and how much money they get from certain warrant articles from all of the valley communities. And it is important. It's also important to, like you talked about with the Freiburg, the Eastern Slope Airport, you know, we may not use them, but when we do, it's really important. So in the context of that, I also look at who's asking for money and why and what their function is. So like you said, I think Charity Navigator is one that you go to for the larger charities, and it tells how much the CEO makes and all that kind of thing. So we could definitely get more information, and it's also public information for any registered nonprofit. So if you see anything specific, I'll be happy to pursue it too, and maybe towards next year we can look at different documentation to request.
Okay, and another thing, I'd just like to say that someone pointed out to me that, you know, I mean, we're talking about people that are, I don't know the appropriate word, so I'm not even going to use it, but for instance, Northern Human Services, is that not where the people go for mental health issues, or
They're a behavioral health
Okay.
service provider agency, which includes mental health, substance misuse,
Right.
disorders.
I knew I wouldn't say the appropriate words.
No, it's-
You know, you have to be so careful so you don't offend anyone. But what I'm talking about is, here they are, this service that is one of the roots of where a lot of our problems are coming from, or being, is asking for just $716, and yet we're being asked by other nonprofits to hand out all kinds of money. And I don't know who, as you say, it's a reoccurring thing, so maybe these people aren't realizing the percentage that these other people that are giving homeless or whatever that may need their services. And I know it's based on what service Jackson gives, but I'm just saying that it seems as though with all of these nonprofits, NGOs, or however you want to put it, that we should start maybe as citizenry looking to where it really would be the most value to help all of these other nonprofits or regional things that are asking for money. And
Thank
I
you.
appreciate the fact that somebody pointed that out to me, because I didn't realize that.
I'll tell you what would be a really good education if you're up for it. Go to the budget meeting in Conway, and you'll hear from all of them. And they get asked some pretty tough questions on substantiating what money they're asking for, and you know, by family, by initiative, and what they do. And it's a grueling process for sure. But I also encourage everyone to go to the different either websites or just learn about the organizations. If I think I have the number right, there are over 800 nonprofits in our valley, or maybe that's in New Hampshire, but a lot of them in our valley. So it can be very overwhelming. And if you don't recognize some of the ones that are on our list that do come to our town to ask for money, definitely do a little more research on your own or ask. But you know, I just look at the list of, like you said, $25,000 for 10 to 15 organizations, and do we want to change the mix or whatever? That would be worth it to go to that organization and saying, you know, there's a passion for that. And don't forget, you can always donate on your own too.
Right, and again, thank you for that information, and yes, thank you for the people in Jackson to put Channel 3 back on, because you don't have to attend the meetings.
Right.
You watch them on television, because you can't,
That's right.
as a, you know, non-resident,
Right.
maybe participate. At least you can see, as you say, with the information.
Okay, lastly, there was a question at the end of the last meeting about whether or not we were going to talk about the general fund balance. And generally, we talk about that when we set the tax rate in October-ish. So, you know, the budget definitely affects how we set the tax rate, as do the taxes that are collected by the properties. And last year, we were able to use $250,000 of the general fund to reduce the municipal tax rate. So we are very aware of the money that we are able to have to help the tax rate. We're not sure what's going to happen next year. Like we said, Jason Call, our assessor, was at a meeting a month or so ago and talked about the possibility that our assessed values are going to increase substantially. So he kind of set the stage for what we may possibly see. That will, when that comes through, we'll be able to see what our fund balance is at that time to see what we can do to help with the tax rate. Please don't ever forget that the tax rate is 3 or 4 components depending on whether or not you are in the, 4 or 5 components depending on whether or not you're in the water precinct. So, Bob?
Well, I just wanted to say too that this doesn't, the valuation doesn't raise your taxes. Us finding, supporting a larger budget is what will raise your taxes. When properties are revaluated, and Jason was here, 2 meetings ago, and said this very same thing, that typically a third of the properties in a town are gonna see a rise in their tax rate, in their tax bill. A third are gonna see lowering, and a third are gonna be about the same. And that's based on the fact that some properties have risen more in value, but the static amount is the amount that we spend out of the budgets. And that doesn't go up or down based on a revaluation. Did I get that right there? Yes, thank you.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
All right, one more thing that I forgot. We need to make a motion on the total of the warrant articles. And I will make a motion to approve the 2024 proposed budget for warrant articles of $985,291.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Did I get everything, Jewel? Any other comments?
I would just like to make sure, because sometimes it feels like it might slip through the cracks, but the next time we do schedule a transportation meeting, making sure that we're going to make doubly sure we post that
Yep.
in all the locations where our meetings are posted, so that everybody has the opportunity to attend and participate.
Will that meeting be here?
I think the next one is here.
We haven't,
It's so tough to.
I know.
Public,
Agreed. And
oh wait, that's the Jackson
well, what
ambulance.
what we've done a couple times is we've done our Bartlett Jackson ambulance and transfer station meetings on the same day, so we can get all the select folks together. So that next meeting is on April 9th, and it starts at 4:30 after our select board meeting. So if we do a transfer station meeting that same day, I'll try to get that done, and it would be here. So that's my goal. I have it written down to try to get a meeting on the calendar for that date, and to be determined, but we'll let you know. It's tough getting 6 people together.
herding cats.
Yes. Yep. Anything else? I will make a motion to adjourn at 4:44.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate the input and the attendance.
You know,